Previously in the book of Judges, we saw how Israel kept falling into a cycle of sin, suffering, and salvation. Even after God raised up leaders like Othniel, Ehud, Deborah, and Gideon, the people turned back to idols again and again. Now, in chapters 11 to 21, the story takes a darker turn. We meet Jephthah, who makes a heartbreaking vow, and Samson, whose strength and downfall leave a lasting mark. As Israel falls deeper into sin, the nation crumbles into civil war and chaos. These are some of the most tragic yet important stories in the Bible, reminding us of the cost of turning away from God, and the patience of a God who never gives up on his people. Let's continue the story. Jephthah the Gileadite was a brave warrior, but he had a difficult start in life. He was the son of Gilead, but his mother was a prostitute. When Gilead's lawful wife had sons, those sons grew up and drove Jephthah away, telling him he would not get any share in their father's inheritance, because his mother was not the same as theirs. So Jephthah ran away and lived in a land called Tob, where some reckless men gathered around him and followed him. Later, when the Ammonites came to make war against Israel, the elders of Gilead remembered Jephthah and went to bring him back from Tob. They asked him to come and be their leader in the fight against the Ammonites. But Jephthah reminded them how they had once hated and driven him out. He asked why they had come to him now, when they were in trouble. The elders said they were turning back to him because they needed his help, and if he agreed, they would make him the ruler over all of Gilead. Jephthah asked them to confirm if they really meant it. If the Lord gave him victory, would they truly make him their leader? They promised before the Lord that they would, and so Jephthah went with them. The people made him their leader, and Jephthah spoke all his words before God at Mizpeh. Then Jephthah sent messengers to the king of Ammon, asking why he had come to fight against Israel. The king replied that Israel had taken Ammonite land when they came from Egypt, and he demanded that the land be returned peacefully. Jephthah sent messengers back with a reply, explaining that Israel had not taken the land of Moab or Ammon. He told the history of how the Israelites had come from Egypt, asked to pass peacefully through Edom and Moab but were refused, so they stayed at Kadesh. Then they went around those lands and came to the border of the Amorites. When Israel asked to pass through, King Sihon refused and attacked them. But the Lord gave Israel victory, and they took over the land of the Amorites, not the Ammonites. Jephthah reminded the king that it was the Lord who had driven out those nations, and Israel was only living in the land that God had given them. He asked if the king of Ammon was better than Balak, the former king of Moab, who never fought Israel. He said that Israel had lived in the land for 300 years without anyone trying to reclaim it, so why now? Jephthah made it clear he had done nothing wrong, and if the king fought, the Lord would be the judge between them. But the king of Ammon didn't listen. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah. He traveled through Gilead and Manasseh and on to Mizpeh, then advanced toward the Ammonites. Before going into battle, Jephthah made a vow to God. He promised that if God gave him victory, he would offer a burnt offering whatever came out of his house first, to greet him when he returned home. The Lord gave Jephthah victory, and he defeated the Ammonites in 20 cities, causing a great slaughter and ending their threat. But when Jephthah came home to Mizpeh, his only child, his daughter, came out to greet him with tambourines and dancing. He had no other children. When he saw her, he tore his clothes in grief and cried out, for he had made a promise to the Lord and could not go back on it. His daughter responded with bravery, telling him to keep his word to the Lord, since the Lord had given him victory. She only asked for 2 months, to go into the mountains with her friends, and mourn that she would never marry. Jephthah agreed, and she went for 2 months. When she returned, Jephthah fulfilled the vow he made to God. She never knew a man, and from then on, it became a tradition in Israel that each year, the young women of Israel would go out for 4 days to remember and mourn Jephthah's daughter. The men of Ephraim gathered and went north to confront Jephthah. They were angry and asked him why he went to fight against the Ammonites, without calling them to join. They even threatened to burn down his house with him inside. Jephthah replied that he and his people had been in a serious conflict with the Ammonites. Though he had asked for Ephraim's help, they didn't come to save them. So, risking his own life, he went ahead to battle, and the Lord gave him victory. He asked why they were now coming to fight against him. Then Jephthah gathered all the men of Gilead and fought against the men of Ephraim. The Gileadites defeated them, because the Ephraimites had insulted them, by calling them fugitives living among the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh. The Gileadites then seized the crossings of the Jordan River, to block the escape route of the Ephraimites. Whenever a man tried to cross and said he was not from Ephraim, they would test him by asking him to say the word Shibboleth. But the Ephraimites couldn't pronounce it correctly and would say Sibboleth. That gave them away, and the Gileadites would capture and kill them. On that day, 42,000 Ephraimites were killed. Jephthah served as a judge over Israel for 6 years before he died. He was buried in one of the towns of Gilead. After him, Ibzan from Bethlehem became judge. He had 30 sons and 30 daughters. He gave his daughters in marriage outside his clan, and brought in 30 daughters from outside for his sons. He judged Israel for 7 years, then died and was buried in Bethlehem. After him came Elon from the tribe of Zebulun, who judged Israel for 10 years before he died, and was buried in Aijalon in Zebulun's territory. Next was Abdon, the son of Hillel from Pirathon. He had 40 sons and 30 grandsons who rode on 70 young donkeys. He judged Israel for 8 years, then died and was buried in Pirathon, in the hill country of Ephraim, in the land once occupied by the Amalekites. Once again, the people of Israel did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and so the Lord handed them over to the Philistines, who ruled over them for 40 years. During this time, there was a man named Manoah from the town of Zorah. He belonged to the tribe of Dan. Manoah's wife could not have children, but one day, the angel of the Lord appeared to her, and told her that even though she had not been able to conceive, she would soon have a son. The angel warned her not to drink wine or any strong drink, and not to eat anything unclean, because the child would be set apart for God, as a Nazirite from the time he was in her womb. The angel also said that this child would begin to save Israel from the power of the Philistines. The woman quickly went and told her husband what had happened. She said a man of God had come to her, and his appearance was like that of an angel, very awesome, but she didn't ask him where he was from, and he didn't tell her his name. She explained to her husband that the man had told her she would have a son and should not drink wine, strong drink, or eat anything unclean, because the boy would be a Nazirite to God from birth until death. Manoah then prayed to the Lord, asking him to send the man of God again, so they could learn how to raise the child. God heard Manoah's prayer, and the angel appeared again to his wife while she was out in the field. She quickly ran to get her husband and brought him to the angel. When Manoah met the angel, he asked if he was the same man who had spoken to his wife before. The angel said he was. Manoah asked what they should do for the child and how to raise him. The angel repeated the instructions. The woman must not eat anything from the vine, drink wine or strong drink, or eat anything unclean. Manoah then asked the angel to stay while he prepared a young goat for him. But the angel said he would not eat the food. If Manoah wanted to prepare something, he should offer it as a burnt offering to the Lord. Manoah still didn't realize that he was talking to an angel. He asked the angel for his name, so they could honor him when the promise came true. But the angel said his name was a secret. Manoah then took the goat along with a grain offering, and offered it on a rock to the Lord. As they watched, something amazing happened. The angel did something wondrous. When the flame rose from the altar toward heaven, the angel of the Lord went up in the flame. Manoah and his wife saw this and immediately fell face down on the ground. After that, the angel did not appear to them again, and Manoah finally understood that he had seen an angel of the Lord. He was afraid and said to his wife, "We are going to die because we have seen God." But his wife reassured him. She said, "If the Lord wanted to kill us, he would not have accepted our offering, or shown us these things, or told us about the child." Later, the woman gave birth to a son and named him Samson. As he grew, the Lord blessed him, and the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him, while he was living in the area between Zorah and Eshtaol, in the land of Dan. One day, Samson went down to a town called Timnath, and saw a young woman there who was a Philistine. When he returned home, he told his father and mother, "I saw a woman in Timnath from the daughters of the Philistines. Get her for me as my wife." His parents were surprised and asked him, "Is there no woman among our relatives, or among all our people, that you would go to marry a Philistine, someone from an uncircumcised nation?" But Samson insisted and said, "Get her for me, because she pleases me." What his parents didn't know was that this was part of God's plan. The Lord was using this situation to create an opportunity against the Philistines, who were ruling over Israel at that time. Later, Samson went to Timnath with his father and mother. While they were near the vineyards, a young lion came roaring toward him. Then the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon Samson, and with nothing in his hands, he tore the lion apart as easily as someone would tear apart a young goat. He didn't tell his parents what had happened. Then he went to see the woman, and he still liked her very much. After some time, when he returned to take her as his wife, he turned aside to look at the lion's body, and saw that bees had made a hive in the carcass, and there was honey. He scooped some of the honey into his hands and ate it as he walked. He even gave some to his parents, and they ate it too, but he didn't tell them that the honey came from a lion's carcass. Later, his father went down to finalize the marriage, and Samson held a feast there, as it was the custom for young men. When the Philistines saw him, they brought 30 men to be his companions for the occasion. During the feast, Samson said to them, "Let me give you a riddle. If you can solve it, and tell me the answer within the 7 days of the feast, I'll give you 30 sheets and 30 sets of clothes. But if you can't, then you must give me 30 sheets and 30 sets of clothes." They agreed and asked to hear the riddle. Samson said, "Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet." They couldn't figure it out even after 3 days. By the 7th day, the men pressured Samson's wife and told her, "Get the answer from your husband, or we'll burn you and your father's house. Did you invite us here just to rob us?" So she cried and begged Samson, saying, "You must hate me. You don't love me. You gave a riddle to my people and haven't even told me the answer." Samson replied, "I haven't even told my father or my mother. Why should I tell you?" But she kept crying through all 7 days of the feast. Finally, on the last day, Samson gave in and told her the answer. Then she passed it on to her people. Before the sun set on the 7th day, the men of the city came to Samson and said, "What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion?" Samson knew what had happened, and he replied, "If you hadn't plowed with my heifer, you wouldn't have solved my riddle," meaning they wouldn't have known the answer if they hadn't used his wife to get it. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and he went down to the city of Ashkelon, killed 30 men there, took their belongings, and gave the clothes to the men who had answered the riddle. He was so angry that he left and went back to his father's house. Meanwhile, the woman he had married was given to another man, one of his companions who had been at the feast. Some time later, during the wheat harvest, Samson decided to visit his wife, bringing a young goat as a gift. He planned to go into her room, but her father wouldn't let him. The father explained that he thought Samson had completely rejected her, so he gave her to Samson's friend instead. Then he offered Samson her younger sister, saying she was even more beautiful and that Samson could take her instead. But Samson was angry and said that, this time he would not be blamed, for what he was about to do to the Philistines. He caught 300 foxes, tied them in pairs by their tails, and placed a burning torch between each pair of tails. Then he let the foxes run through the Philistines' grain fields, burning the stacked grain, the standing grain, the vineyards, and the olive groves. When the Philistines found out that Samson had done this, they became furious. In revenge, they went and burned both the woman and her father to death. Samson was enraged by what they had done, and said he would get revenge and then stop. He attacked the Philistines and struck them with great force, defeating many of them. After that, he went to stay at the top of a rock in a place called Etam. The Philistines gathered their army and camped in Judah, spreading out into a place called Lehi. The people of Judah asked them why they had come, and the Philistines said they had come to capture Samson and do to him what he had done to them. So 3,000 men from Judah went up to the rock of Etam and said to Samson, "Don't you know the Philistines rule over us? What have you done?" Samson replied, "I only did to them what they did to me." They told him they had come to tie him up and hand him over to the Philistines. Samson asked them to promise not to kill him themselves. They agreed, saying they would only bind him and hand him over. So they tied him up with 2 new ropes and brought him from the rock. As they reached Lehi, the Philistines came shouting against him. But the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon Samson. The ropes on his arms became like burnt thread, and they fell off his hands. He found a fresh jawbone of a donkey, grabbed it, and used it to kill 1,000 Philistine men. Afterward, Samson said, "With the jawbone of a donkey, I made heaps upon heaps, with the jawbone of a donkey I have slain 1,000 men." When he finished speaking, he threw the jawbone away and named that place Ramath-lehi, meaning Jawbone Hill. After the battle, Samson became very thirsty. He cried out to the Lord, saying, "You have given this great victory to your servant, but now am I going to die of thirst, and fall into the hands of these uncircumcised people?" Then God opened a hollow place in the ground, and water flowed out of it. Samson drank, and his strength returned. He revived, and so he named the spring, in Hakor, which means, the caller's spring, and it remained there in Lehi. Samson went on to lead and judge Israel for 20 years during the time the Philistines were in power. One day, Samson went to Gaza and saw a woman there who lived a sinful life, and he spent time with her. When the people of Gaza heard that Samson was in their city, they planned to capture him. They waited quietly all night at the city gate, saying they would kill him in the morning. But Samson only stayed until midnight. Then he got up, went to the city gate, pulled the doors and the posts right out of the ground, put them on his shoulders, and carried them to the top of a hill near Hebron. Later, Samson fell in love with a woman named Delilah, who lived in the valley of Sorek. The leaders of the Philistines came to her, and asked her to find out the secret of Samson's strength so they could defeat him. They promised to pay her a large amount of silver. So Delilah began asking Samson, "What is the secret of your strength? How can you be tied up and defeated?" Samson first told her that, if he were tied with 7 fresh cords that had never dried, he would become as weak as any other man. The Philistine leaders brought the cords to her, and she tied him up while men waited in hiding. Then she shouted, "The Philistines are here, Samson!" But he snapped the cords easily, and they still didn't know the secret of his strength. Delilah complained that he had lied to her and begged him again to tell her the truth. This time, Samson said if he was tied up with brand new ropes that had never been used, he would become weak. So she tried again with new ropes, but Samson broke free just as easily. She asked him a 3rd time, and he said if she wove the 7 braids of his hair into the fabric on a loom, he would become weak. She did as he said, but again he broke free. Frustrated, Delilah asked him how he could say he loved her if he kept lying to her. She kept pressuring him every day until he finally told her the truth. He said he had been dedicated to God as a Nazirite since birth, and if his hair was cut, he would lose his strength and become like any other man. When Delilah saw that he had told her everything, she sent word to the Philistine leaders, and they returned with the money. She put Samson to sleep on her lap, called in a man, and had his 7 locks of hair shaved off. Then she began to torment him, and his strength left him. She shouted, "The Philistines are here, Samson!" He woke up, thinking he could shake himself free like before, but he didn't realize the Lord had left him. The Philistines captured him, gouged out his eyes, and took him to Gaza. There, they tied him with bronze chains and made him grind grain in prison. But over time, his hair began to grow back. The Philistine leaders gathered to offer a great sacrifice to their god Dagon. They celebrated, saying their god had delivered Samson into their hands. They praised their idol and called for Samson to be brought out to entertain them. Samson was led out of prison and made to perform before them. They placed him between 2 central pillars of the building. Samson asked the young boy to place his hands on the pillars so he could lean against them. The house was crowded with people, including all the Philistine rulers, and about 3,000 men and women were watching from the roof. Then Samson prayed to God, asking him to remember him and give him strength one last time, so he could take revenge for the loss of his eyes. Samson grabbed the 2 central pillars, one with each hand, and pushed with all his might, saying, "Let me die with the Philistines." The entire building collapsed on the rulers and everyone inside. In his death, Samson killed more people than he had during his life. His brothers and family came to get his body, brought him home, and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the family tomb of Manoah, his father. Samson had led Israel as a judge for 20 years. There was a man named Micah who lived in the hill country of Ephraim. One day, he spoke to his mother and said, "The 1,100 pieces of silver that were stolen from you, the ones you cursed about and mentioned in my hearing, I have them. I was the one who took them." His mother didn't scold him. Instead, she said, "Bless you, my son, in the name of the Lord." When Micah gave the silver back to her, she said she had completely dedicated that silver to the Lord, so it could be used to make a carved image and a molded image for her son. Though Micah returned all the silver, his mother only took 200 shekels of it and gave it to a craftsman. The craftsman used the silver to make a carved idol and a metal one, and both were placed in Micah's house. Micah had a shrine in his home. He made a special religious garment called an ephod and kept household gods. He even chose one of his sons to act as his personal priest. This was during a time when there was no king in Israel, so people just did whatever they thought was right in their own eyes. Around that same time, a young man from Bethlehem in Judah, from the tribe of Judah but also a Levite, had left his hometown to find a place to live. As he was traveling, he arrived at Micah's house in the hill country of Ephraim. Micah asked where he was from, and the young man said he was a Levite from Bethlehem in Judah, looking for a place to stay. Micah offered him a job, saying, "Live with me and be like a father and a priest to me. I'll pay you 10 shekels of silver a year, give you clothes, and provide food." The Levite agreed and stayed with Micah. Micah treated him like one of his own sons. Then Micah officially appointed him as his priest, and the young Levite served in his house. Micah was very pleased and said, "Now I know the Lord will bless me, because I have a Levite as my priest." The tribe of Dan was still looking for a place to live, because they had not yet received their full inheritance. So, the Danites sent 5 brave men from their towns in Zorah and Eshtaol, to explore the land and find a good place to settle. As they traveled, they came to the hill country of Ephraim and stopped at the house of Micah to stay there. While they were near Micah's house, they recognized the voice of the young Levite who was staying there, so they went to him and asked, "Who brought you here? What are you doing in this place? What is your purpose here?" The Levite explained that Micah had hired him and made him a priest. Then the men asked the Levite to ask God if their journey would be successful. The priest told them, "Go in peace. The Lord is watching over your journey." The 5 men continued their trip and reached Laish, where they found people living peacefully and securely, like the people of Sidon. There were no rulers to trouble them, and they lived far away from others, isolated and not involved with anyone else. When the men returned to their people in Zorah and Eshtaol, their relatives asked what they had found. The men said, "Get ready to go with us. The land is very good. Don't waste time. Let's go take it. The people there are relaxed and unprepared, and the land is rich with everything we could need. God has given it to us." So, 600 men from the tribe of Dan armed themselves for war and set out. On their way, they camped near Kirjathjearim in Judah, and that place became known as Mahanadan. From there, they traveled to the hill country of Ephraim and arrived again at Micah's house. The 5 spies told the others, "Do you know that in these houses there are a special ephod, household idols, a carved image, and a molded image? Think about what we should do." Then they all went to the Levite's house, greeted him, and while the 600 armed men stood guard at the gate, the 5 spies went inside and took the carved image, the ephod, the idols, and the molded image. The priest asked them, "What are you doing?" But they said, "Be quiet. Come with us and be our priest. Wouldn't it be better to serve an entire tribe and family in Israel than just one man's household?" The priest was pleased with the offer. He took the ephod, the idols, and the carved image and went with them. They continued their journey, placing their children, livestock, and belongings in front of them. Meanwhile, Micah's neighbors gathered together and chased after the Danites. When they caught up with them, they called out. The Danites turned and asked, "What's the matter? Why are you coming after us with all these people?" Micah replied, "You've taken the gods I made and my priest. What else do I have? And now you ask me what's the matter?" But the men of Dan said, "Be careful what you say, or some of our men might get angry and attack you and your family." Seeing they were too strong to fight, Micah gave up and returned home. The Danites then took all the items from Micah's house, including the priest, and went to Laish. The people there were peaceful and unaware of danger. The Danites attacked them with the sword and burned the city. There was no one to help the people of Laish, because they lived far from the city of Zidon and had no allies. The Danites rebuilt the city and settled there. They named the city Dan, after their ancestor Dan, one of the sons of Israel, though it had originally been called Laish. The tribe of Dan set up the carved image for worship, and Jonathan, the son of Gershom and grandson of Manasseh, along with his sons, served as priests for the tribe, until the time when the land was taken into captivity. They continued to use Micah's idol the whole time. The house of God was still located in Shiloh. A Levite man was staying in the hill country of Ephraim. He had taken a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. However, she was unfaithful to him and left him, returning to her father's house in Bethlehem, where she stayed for 4 months. After some time, the Levite decided to go and speak kindly to her to bring her back. He took his servant and 2 donkeys and traveled to her father's house. When the woman's father saw him, he welcomed him with joy. The father-in-law persuaded the Levite to stay for 3 days. They ate, drank, and stayed there. On the 4th day, the Levite prepared to leave, but the father-in-law encouraged him to stay and eat before traveling. Again, they spent the night. On the 5th day, the same thing happened. The father-in-law delayed him until afternoon with food and talk. Finally, the Levite decided to leave that evening with his concubine and servant. They came near to Jebus, which is now Jerusalem, but the Levite didn't want to stay in a foreign city that wasn't part of Israel. He said they would continue to Gibeah or Ramah instead. As they reached Gibeah, which belonged to the tribe of Benjamin, the sun had set. They stopped there, hoping someone would offer them a place to stay, but no one did. While they were sitting in the town square, an old man, who was also from Ephraim and living in Gibeah, returned from working in the field. He saw the travelers and asked where they were going and where they had come from. The Levite explained his journey, from Bethlehem to the hill country of Ephraim, and said that even though they had supplies, no one had taken them into a house. The old man welcomed them and insisted they not spend the night in the street. He brought them to his house, fed their donkeys, and they washed their feet and ate together. But as they were enjoying themselves, some wicked men of the city surrounded the house. They beat on the door and shouted to the old man, demanding he bring out the visitor so they could abuse him. The old man went out and pleaded with them not to do such a wicked thing, especially to someone who had come under his roof. Instead, he offered them his own daughter and the Levite's concubine, saying they could do what they wanted with them, but not to harm the man. Still, the men refused to listen. So the Levite took his concubine and gave her to them. The men abused her throughout the night, and in the morning, they let her go. As daylight came, the woman collapsed at the doorstep of the house where her master was staying. Later that morning, the Levite got up to continue his journey. When he opened the door, he found his concubine lying there with her hands on the threshold. He told her to get up so they could leave, but there was no response. He placed her body on the donkey and traveled back home. When he arrived at his house, he took a knife, cut her body into 12 pieces, and sent a piece to each tribe of Israel. Everyone who received a piece was shocked. They said nothing like this had ever happened in Israel since the people came out of Egypt. They told each other to think about it, discuss it, and decide what must be done. At that time, all the people of Israel came together as one, from the farthest northern part of Dan, to the southern end in Beersheba, including those from the land of Gilead. They gathered before the Lord at Mizpeh. The leaders from all the tribes stood before the Lord, and there were 400,000 soldiers carrying swords. Meanwhile, the tribe of Benjamin heard about this gathering. Then the people of Israel asked the Levite man to tell them what had happened. The Levite explained that he had gone to Gibeah in Benjamin with his concubine to spend the night. But the men of Gibeah had surrounded the house and attacked him, intending to kill him. Instead, they abused his concubine until she died. He told them that he had cut her body into pieces, and sent the parts across the land of Israel, to show everyone the horrible crime that had been committed. Then he asked them all to consider what should be done. The people responded in unity, saying none of them would go home until justice was done. They decided to draw lots, to choose men from each tribe, to go and fight against Gibeah. 1 out of every 10 men would gather food for the army, and the rest would fight to punish the city for its evil. The entire army came together, united in purpose. They sent messengers to the tribe of Benjamin, asking them to hand over the wicked men from Gibeah, so they could be punished and the evil could be removed from Israel. But the Benjamites refused and instead gathered their own army to fight back. 26,000 men from Benjamin, plus 700 elite warriors from Gibeah, prepared for battle. These 700 were skilled with slingshots and could hit a target with great accuracy. The rest of Israel had 400,000 trained soldiers. Israel asked God who should go first into battle, and God told them to send the tribe of Judah first. The Israelites set up camp near Gibeah and began the battle. But on the first day, the Benjamites defeated them, killing 22,000 Israelite soldiers. The next day, Israel encouraged themselves and returned to the same battle position. They again asked the Lord if they should fight, and the Lord said yes. But again, Benjamin defeated them and killed 18,000 more soldiers. The Israelites then went up to the house of God, wept before the Lord, fasted all day, and offered sacrifices. They asked again if they should continue the battle, and this time the Lord said He would give them victory the next day. Israel then set an ambush around Gibeah. On the third day, they went up again and arranged their troops just as before. The Benjamites came out to attack and began killing Israelites as they had done before, about 30 men. Thinking they were winning again, they chased after Israel, but it was a trap. The main army pretended to flee, drawing the Benjamites away from the city. Then the hidden ambush team rushed into Gibeah and attacked, setting the city on fire. When the Benjamites saw the smoke rising into the sky, they realized they had been tricked. The Israelites turned around and attacked from both sides. The Benjamites were surrounded and overwhelmed. About 18,000 of them were killed in the battle. Some tried to escape toward the wilderness but were chased down, and another 7,000 men were killed along the way. In total, 25,000 Benjamite soldiers died that day. Only 600 men managed to escape to the rock of Rimmon, where they stayed for 4 months. Meanwhile, the Israelites went through all the towns of Benjamin, destroying everyone they found, men, animals, and everything else. They also burned down the cities. After the war with the tribe of Benjamin, the men of Israel had made a serious promise at Mizpeh, saying that none of them would give their daughters as wives to the men of Benjamin. The people then came to the house of God and stayed there until evening, crying loudly before the Lord. They asked, "O Lord God of Israel, why has this happened, that one of the tribes of Israel is now missing?" The next morning, they rose early and built an altar. They offered burnt offerings and peace offerings to the Lord. Then they asked among themselves, "Who among all the tribes of Israel didn't come up to Mizpeh to meet with the Lord?" Because they had made another strong promise that anyone who didn't show up at Mizpeh must be put to death. They felt sorry for what had happened to the tribe of Benjamin and said, "One whole tribe is now cut off from Israel. What can we do to find wives for the men of Benjamin who are left, since we swore not to give them our daughters?" They checked their records and found that no one from Jabesh Gilead had come to Mizpeh. So the congregation sent 12,000 of their bravest soldiers to attack Jabesh Gilead. They were told to kill every male and every woman who had been with a man. Among the people of Jabesh Gilead, they found 400 young women who were virgins, and they brought them to the camp at Shiloh in the land of Canaan. Then the rest of Israel sent messengers to the surviving Benjamites, who were hiding at the rock of Rimmon to offer peace. The men of Benjamin returned, and the people gave them the 400 women from Jabesh Gilead as wives. But there still were not enough women for all the men. The Israelites were deeply sorrowful because one tribe of Israel had nearly vanished. The elders then asked, "What can we do for the remaining men of Benjamin? We need to make sure their tribe continues, but we can't give them our daughters because of the promise we made." Then someone remembered that there was a yearly festival to the Lord in Shiloh, north of Bethel, near the road from Bethel to Shechem. So they made a plan. They told the Benjamites to hide in the vineyards near Shiloh. When the young women came out to dance during the festival, the men were to come out and take a wife for themselves and return to their land. They said that if the fathers or brothers of the women complained, the leaders of Israel would speak kindly to them and remind them that they had not broken their promise, since they had not willingly given their daughters. So the men of Benjamin did as they were told. They hid in the vineyards and, when the women came out to dance, they took wives from among them and returned to their land. They rebuilt their towns and settled there. After all this, the rest of the Israelites went back to their own tribes and families and returned to their homes. In those days, there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what seemed right in their own eyes. The final chapters of Judges show a nation that lost its way, falling into violence, idolatry, and deep moral chaos. Without a king or godly leadership, everyone did what seemed right in their own eyes. Yet even in darkness, God's justice and mercy never left his people. If this story moved you, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful Bible stories told simply and clearly. Turn on the bell icon so you never miss the next episode in our Bible storytelling series.